Imagine this for a second. You've just stepped away from one of the most demanding jobs in, corporate America.
Right.
You're Debra Mailman, a senior program manager at Microsoft. You've done it. You've navigated the whole corporate labyrinth. You've mastered these incredibly complex systems, and you've officially hit your financial independence number.
That's the moment. Your fire moment.
Exactly. So if you ask anyone, what happens next? The answer seems so obvious.
A permanent vacation.
Permanent vacation. Sipping métés on a beach somewhere, maybe taking up golf. Definitely not setting an alarm clock for, the next 50 years.
But that's the thing, that's actually rarely what happens when someone really achieves financial independence.
Why is that?
Well, the kind of discipline it takes to get there. It demands to be applied to something. It demands purpose.
That's so true. What Debra did next, it wasn't retirement at all. I mean, within weeks of leaving Microsoft, she was on a plane.
And not to a beach resort.
No, she was heading straight into active disaster zones. First, it was the West Indies, right after Hurricane Maria. Then Houston to deal with the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey.
So she went from managing software deployments
to handling construction logistics and, tracking performance indicators for relief organizations on the ground.
It was an immediate jump. And it proved something really profound, I think.
What's that?
That her high-level corporate skills, her project management expertise, it wasn't just valuable in a boardroom. It was this strategic resource that nonprofits desperately need but just can't afford to hire.
She just seamlessly transitioned from a salary to a high-impact service.
Exactly.
Which, it raises this really counterintuitive question for anyone who's on this FIRE journey. Does achieving that golden promise, that dream of early retirement, does it actually require more work than before? Just, for a totally different kind of reward?
It's such a great question because the whole narrative that FIRE is about passive leisure, that it's just this total escape, it's a myth.
For the people who actually get there, you mean?
For the people who successfully achieve it, yes. The real objective, it isn't just piling up money for its own sake. It's about getting something way more powerful.
And what's that?
Something we call time affluence.
Time affluence. I like that. The unconstrained ability to choose service or passion over a paycheck.
That's the ultimate resource. But here's where it gets interesting. If we accept that, if we say FIRE is this platform for contribution, we have to admit that not all platforms are built the same. We know about the different flavors of FIRE, right? Lean, fat, barista.
They're Coast FIRE.
But here's the critical piece that I think gets overlooked. How do those specific financial models, which are built on totally different spending and saving plans, how do they actually dictate the type and the scale of social impact you're best equipped to deliver once you finally pull the plug?
That's a fantastic question.
And that's really our mission for today's podcast. We want to move beyond just the accumulation phase.
Right.
We're challenging this idea that financial independence is just an escape from something and framing it instead as a strategic launch pad for purpose, for a lasting social contribution.
Okay, so let's start with, the basics, because the commitment it takes to pull off any version of FIRE is, well, it's extreme.
It really is. At its core, FIRE rests on two pillars. First, extreme savings. We're often talking 50 to 75% of your income.
Which is just staggering to most people. And the second piece?
Aggressive, systematic investment. The whole philosophical spark for this movement, which was really popularized back in the 90s, was about reframing your entire relationship with money.
It's that idea of looking at every single expense, not just in dollars, but in, in the life energy it costs you, right?
Exactly. The number of working hours it took to earn that money. It shifts your whole mindset from just, budgeting to actually valuing your time and your future freedom above everything else.
You're literally buying your life back hour by hour.
And the mathematical result of all that discipline is reaching what they call your FIRE number.
And that number isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's calculated as 25 times your expected annual expenses.
Right. And that figure, it's based on historical market data, and it should, in theory, let you live indefinitely just by using a safe withdrawal rate.
Which is usually set at around 3 to 4% of your total portfolio each year.
Correct. It's the moment your portfolio can support you forever without you ever earning another dollar from a job.
But, hitting that number, that's really only half the battle, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The financial challenge ends, and a much more complicated psychological one begins.
Because you've just freed up 40, 50, maybe 60 hours a week that used to be filled with structure and, your identity.
That is the monumental hurdle people rarely plan for. especially for high achievers. Work gives you this whole ecosystem, right?
100%. It's your identity, it's your daily structure, it's where you socialize, it's where you get that sense of accomplishment.
And when that just disappears, poof, overnight, if you don't have a plan to replace it, it can lead to this psychological emptiness.
Adrift, the big now what void. And we see that reflected in the research. The people who retire early and are happy about it, they don't see FI as the end of activity.
Not at all. They frame it as the beginning of a new chapter, a self-directed, meaningful next chapter. It's a transition to something, not just an escape from a bad job.
Which explains why so many people prefer to phase out of work instead of just stopping cold turkey. The data says something like 70% of retirees would rather do that.
It's human nature. We crave engagement and purpose.
So let's connect this back to that strategic question you asked earlier. If the goal is contribution, how does the specific FIRE model you choose define what you can actually do?
Right. We have to match the model to the contribution profile. They are not interchangeable.
Okay, let's break them down. Let's start with the one that gets you out the fastest. Lean FIRE Air.
Lean FIRE is all about extreme frugality, a minimalist life. Sometimes people are living on, $25,000 a year or even less.
So it maximizes your time freedom, gets you there the quickest.
It does. But it also means you're operating with the tightest financial margins.
So what does that mean for giving back?
Their contribution profile is almost entirely centered on time, not money. Their financial resources are minimal, so they maximize hands-on volunteering, local activism. They're the field workers.
Got it. They're not the funders.
Exactly. They trade market risk for immediate time flexibility.
Okay, so let's swing to the complete other end of the spectrum. Fat FIRE.
Fat FIRE requires the longest, most aggressive savings period. The goal here isn't just getting by, it's a comfortable, even luxurious retirement. The FIRE number is much, much higher.
So their contribution profile is the mirror image of Lean FIRE.
Precisely. They have the highest capacity for impact through capital. Their profile maximizes large-scale strategic philanthropy. These are the people funding new ventures, setting up major donor-advised funds, or even self-funding big passion projects.
They spent the most time accumulating, so they have the most capital to deploy.
Right.
And then you've got the hybrid model, which is super popular, Barista FIRE.
This is where you quit the high-stress 9 to 5, but you still take on some part-time, low-stress work, maybe for the health benefits or just to cover daily expenses so your nest egg can keep growing.
And that model seems perfectly suited for what you called encore careers.
It's an outstanding fit. An encore career is a purpose-driven role, often using your old skills but for social impact, that still brings in some income. You trade high pay for high meaning.
You get the contribution and you still get to keep a piece of that professional identity.
The best of both worlds, in a way.
Okay, and last but not least, the one that feels the most strategic. Coast FIRE.
Coast FIRE is when you save so aggressively, so early in your career, say in your 20s, that your nest egg gets big enough that it can just coast.
Meaning compound growth alone will get it to your full FIRE number by traditional retirement age. You don't have to add another cent.
You've done all the heavy lifting up front, and what that unlocks mid-career is incredible.
What's the contribution profile look like there?
It's exceptional because you no longer need to save aggressively. You've just freed up maybe 50% or more of your current income.
Wow.
So you can immediately transition into a high-impact, lower-paying service role. You can work for a nonprofit, or you can fully adopt this earning-to-give philosophy we're about to talk about.
So it's clear FIRE isn't just one path to a hammock. It's a whole spectrum of blueprints for how you're going to use your time and money for good.
It shifts the entire question from how do I get enough money to what's the best use of the resources I've already secured.
Okay, so you just brought up this idea of earn to give. It feels like a bit of an outlier in the FIRE world, doesn't it? The goal is usually to escape the grind.
It can seem that way. Why would someone stay in a demanding, high-paying job in tech or finance if they've already hit their Coast FIRE number?
Exactly.
Well, the earn-to-give philosophy, which is really tied to the effective altruism movement, it offers this powerful, data-driven answer.
Which is?
It's about deliberately pursuing a high-earning career, assuming it's morally neutral or positive, with the explicit goal of donating a huge chunk of your salary, 20, 30, sometimes 50%, to highly effective charities.
So the logic is just pure mathematical efficiency.
Exactly. If I'm an amazing software engineer, my financial donation can often create a much more scalable impact than if I quit my job to go, do direct labor at a nonprofit.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about a top software engineer at Google making, say, $250,000. If they donate half of that, $125,000. That one donation can fund the salaries of several nonprofit managers who might be making $65,000 a year. Your comparative advantage is earnings, so you use that to enable dozens of other people to do the direct service work.
And that strategy gives you something really critical: flexibility.
Maximum philanthropic agility. If your impact is tied to your job, it's fixed. But capital can support any cause, anywhere in the world, instantly.
So if a new crisis emerges or a more pressing need is identified, you can just pivot your donations.
Immediately. You can direct your money to whatever is most neglected or urgent, whether it's global poverty, biosecurity, or AI alignment research. You're not betting your whole career on a single problem.
This whole systematic analytical approach, that brings us right to effective altruism, or EA.
Right. EA is basically taking that rigorous optimization mindset from the FIRE journey and applying it to charitable giving.
How does that work in practice?
EA tries to maximize positive impact using evidence and reason. The key idea, which can be a little controversial, is that charities vary wildly in how effective they are.
Meaning a dollar given to one charity can go a lot further than a dollar given to another.
A lot further. They're asking, where can my dollar do the most verifiable, measurable good? They want the highest ROI, but the return is measured in human well-being.
And they use specific metrics for that, right?
They do. In health, for instance, they often use a metric called a QAY, or Quality Adjusted Life Year. It tries to measure both the length and the quality of life added by an intervention.
Okay, I have to push back on that a little bit. That sounds incredibly cold.
It can.
I mean, if you're only using metrics like QAYs, aren't you just going to fund things like malaria nets because the math is easy and dramatic, and ignore something like, say, local arts education or mental health services?
That is the exact ethical debate at the heart of EA. And it's a really important one. What EA forces you to do is confront that choice directly.
To acknowledge the trade-offs.
Yes. Critics say it overlooks cultural value or things that are hard to measure. The EA response is that resources are finite. And if you can save 100 lives for the same cost as saving one, the moral choice is to save the 100.
It's a powerful framework. What about this idea of long-termism?
Long-termism is the idea that we should be focused on protecting the welfare of future generations, that we should work to reduce the risk of existential catastrophes, pandemics, nuclear war, things like that.
Because future generations will vastly outnumber us.
By an astronomical amount. So from a QAY perspective, preventing a catastrophe that would wipe them out is the highest impact thing you could possibly do.
So a fat FIRE person practicing earn to give might not fund today's crisis,
sure,
but a think tank working on biosecurity 50 years from now.
Exactly. And that brings us to the psychological side of giving. Because you mentioned earlier, people seem to prefer giving time over money. Why is that?
Yeah, the research on this is so interesting. Donors consistently prefer giving time, even when a cash donation would be way more efficient for the charity.
And what's the reason?
It all comes down to control and agency. Time is an internal resource. When you give your time, you feel connected to the outcome. You're part of the donation.
Whereas money is external.
It's external. Once you write the check, you lose control. For a high achiever who's used to being in charge, that can be really unsettling.
And that's the perfect bridge back to time affluence, because once you hit FI, you can finally use your time, the thing we instinctively want to give in the most high leverage ways possible. Which brings us to skills-based volunteering.
Right. And, we're really getting into the heart of how this all works in practice. And if this is sparking new ideas for you, if it's changing how you think about your own financial journey, this is probably a great moment to, ask for your support. If you're getting value from this conversation, go ahead and click that subscribe button, give us a like, and ring a bell so you don't miss our future discussions. It really helps us continue to bring these kinds of deep dives to you.
So when people hear volunteering, they usually picture things like, stuffing envelopes or serving at a soup kitchen.
And that work is super important and necessary. But skills-based volunteering, or SBV, is a completely different ballgame.
It really is. It's about applying those decades of specialized, expensive corporate experience to a nonprofit's biggest operational problems.
Because nonprofits are often rich in passion, but poor in, high-level expertise. They can't afford to hire a six-figure IT consultant or a marketing strategist.
Exactly. And this is where the FI retiree who spent 20 years becoming an expert in those exact things can step in and fill this huge gap in the market. It's the ultimate high-leverage move.
And for that retiree, it also solves the identity problem we talked about.
It's the perfect identity substitute. Generic volunteering might not replace the validation of a complex career, but SBV leverages that same complexity just in a new, purpose-driven way.
Let's go back to our opening story about Debra Mailman, the work she was doing in those disaster zones. It wasn't just manual labor.
Not at all. It was strategic. Think about it. She transitioned a paper-based intake system, which was slow and inefficient, to an electronic one that gave real-time data on what was needed where.
That's a system-level change.
It's a foundational change that scales the entire organization's ability to help. That doesn't just help one person, it improves the nonprofit's capacity forever.
And that kind of experience is also the foundation for an encore career.
Right. An encore career isn't a hobby. It's a structured, professional role you take on past midlife, dedicated to social impact.
It often generates some income, which fits that barista fire model perfectly.
It does. And the personal rewards are huge. The research shows that volunteering for just a couple of hours a week can massively improve an older adult's sense of well-being, their social connections, and their health.
You've got another great example of this in action. The story of Charles Brooks after the campfire in California.
Yes, Charles Brooks lived in paradise. He lost his own home in the fire, which was the most destructive in California's history at that time.
And instead of just focusing on his own recovery,
he stepped up and founded the Rebuild Paradise Foundation. His work was just a perfect embodiment of the fire mindset: long-term planning, resource optimization, and systematic execution.
Starting a nonprofit is hard enough. Starting one when your entire town has been destroyed seems impossible. What did his foundation actually do?
They focused on removing the complex barriers that were stopping people from rebuilding, things like paying for property surveys or navigating complex utility regulations. They used charitable funds as a catalyst to get things moving.
And he also got into political advocacy, right?
Deeply. He built relationships with local and county officials. He showed them how the foundation could strategically fill gaps where the government just couldn't move fast enough.
And that work led to a major policy change.
A huge one. Disaster policy was historically built around hurricanes and floods, not wildfires. Charles and his team advocated to get FEMA to change its policy to include funding for tree removal.
That sounds specific, but I'm guessing it was a massive issue.
It was fundamental. There were close to 1 million dead or dying trees left standing in Paradise. Massive safety hazards that weren't covered under normal debris removal.
So they couldn't afford to clear them.
Right. Getting that policy change didn't just help Paradise. It fundamentally altered the recovery process for every wildfire disaster that came after. That's a generational impact.
But that kind of work has to take a huge personal toll, especially when you're a survivor yourself.
It does. And Charles Brooks was very open about that. He said he was constantly in super uncomfortable mode. His advice was critical for anyone thinking about this path.
What was it?
Find a disaster buddy, a peer who gets the work and the trauma, who you can call when you've hit your limit. And his other piece of advice was to be very careful what you promise a disaster-stricken community unless you know you can deliver.
No more heartbreak.
Exactly.
Ah.
But it shows how disciplined, high-leverage skills can create sustainable, high-impact capacity when a community needs it most.
And that tactical focus, that discipline. It leads us to our final section. Making sure your money is deployed with the same strategic mindset as your time.
Right. When you hit FI, especially FAT or Coast Fire, you have to graduate from just writing checks.
You need to get into sophisticated tax strategy. Because if you don't, you're just leaving impact on the table.
A lot of it. And we know the desire to give is there. Over 3/4 of retirees and pre-retirees say charitable giving is really important to them. Many want to give more in retirement.
But there's a big gap between that intention and actually having a plan.
A huge gap. Most people who work with a financial advisor have never had a specific conversation about charitable planning. And that means millions in potential tax savings and philanthropic capital are just lost.
Okay, so let's break this down. First, let's talk about the accumulation phase, your high-earning years before you retire. What's the #1 strategy?
Without a doubt, it's donating appreciated non-cash assets, specifically stocks or mutual funds you've held for more than a year.
Walk me through how that works. Let's say I bought some stock for $10,000 and now it's worth $50,000.
Okay. If you sell that stock, you have a $40,000 capital gain, and you're going to owe tax on that, maybe 15 or 20%.
Right.
But if you donate that stock directly to a charity or a donor-advised fund, 2 amazing things happen. 1, you completely eliminate that capital gains tax.
You never have to pay it.
Never. And 2, you still get to claim a charitable deduction for the full fair market value of the stock, the whole $50,000.
So I'm basically boosting my gift by up to 20% just by avoiding the tax. That's huge.
It's the ultimate win-win.
Yeah.
And this is where donor-advised funds, or DAFs, become an absolutely essential tool for the FIRE community.
So a DAF is basically like a personal savings account, but just for charity.
That's a great way to think of it. You contribute assets, like that appreciated stock, to the DAF, and you get the tax deduction immediately in your high-earning year.
And then the money can grow tax-free in the account, and I can decide where to send it later.
Exactly, which allows you to use the bunching strategy.
Okay, what's bunching?
Well, the standard deduction is pretty high these days, so a lot of people don't have enough deductions to itemize every single year. Bunching means you consolidate, say, 3 or 4 years worth of your planned charitable giving into one big contribution to your DF in a single year.
So in that 1 year, your charitable deduction is so big that it pushes you way over the standard deduction threshold.
Right. You itemize that year and get the maximum tax benefit. Then for the next few years, you just take the standard deduction. Meanwhile, the money is sitting in your DF ready to be granted out over time.
It's pure FIRE-style optimization, but for philanthropy.
100%. Now let's talk about what happens in retirement. The game changes completely.
How so?
It's no longer about maximizing deductions. It's about managing your taxable income. And the key strategy here for people 70 and a half and older is the Qualified Charitable Distribution, or QCD.
The QCD, what does it do?
It lets you transfer up to $108,000 a year directly from a traditional IRA to a charity.
And the timing, 70 and a half, is important because of required minimum distributions, right? RMDs.
Exactly. Once you hit 73, the government forces you to start taking money out of your traditional IRA, and that money is counted as taxable income.
And more taxable income can mean higher taxes on Social Security, higher Medicare premiums. It's a cascade effect.
It is. But here's the magic of the QCD. That transfer to charity counts as your RMD, but the money is never included in your taxable income. It bypasses your tax return entirely.
Wow. So every dollar I give through a QCD is saving me money on income tax, potentially on Medicare premiums, and on Social Security taxes.
Yes. It is an incredibly high leverage move for retirees. It ensures the discipline you use to save the money is matched by the discipline you use to give it away.
But again, there's this huge awareness gap. People just don't know about these tools.
It's staggering. Even among high net worth donors, less than half know about donating appreciated stock, and only about a third know about DAFs.
So after decades of optimizing everything to reach FI, to not optimize your giving, it just seems like the biggest strategic mistake you could make.
It is. The discipline that gets you to FIRE, the systematic planning, the optimization. It's the perfect training ground for becoming a high-impact philanthropist. FI is the boot camp for your next chapter of purpose.
So after all of this, what does it all mean? We started out by saying that financial independence is so much more than just a number in a bank account.
Right. It's the disciplined, calculated acquisition of time affluence. That's the ultimate unconstrained resource.
And that time affluence, combined with that optimized mindset you build on the FIRE journey, it's the perfect one-two punch for contribution.
It is. The skills you use to build your portfolio, project management, systems thinking, resource allocation, are the exact skills that nonprofits are desperate for.
I think the core insight for me, really, is that true fulfillment after you hit FI, it almost never comes from just sitting on a beach. It comes from replacing that lost structure and purpose from your career by solving complex problems for a cause you really care about.
Whether that's through an encore career, high-impact volunteering, or strategic financial giving, that next chapter is defined by measurable impact, not by leisure.
And if the biggest needs in society require these specialized high-level skills that nonprofits just can't afford, that leaves you with one final, I think, very provocative thought. You, the person listening, you have spent your entire career mastering a craft. Maybe it's software development or legal strategy or market analysis, whatever it is.
You've become an expert.
You become an expert. So now that your financial freedom is secure, what complex and currently unsolved problem out there is a perfect match for the unique expertise you spent a lifetime building?
That's the question.
Your knowledge, your training, your ability to execute, that's not just your personal legacy. It is the untapped resource that your financial freedom was built to unlock for the world.
And that is the true mission of time affluence.